Hey everyone, Nabeel here from Impact Soundworks presenting the second video in our Shreddage 3 Masterclass tutorial series. In this video, we'll take a look at the core articulations included with all Shreddage 3 guitars and give you some ideas for how to play and write with them. Shreddage 3 includes a powerful tool you can use to customize how different articulations are triggered. However, this topic deserves its own video in the intermediate unit and assumes knowledge of common mapping techniques. For now, we encourage you to get really comfortable with the default mapping that we've created, as our goal in the Novice Unit is to get you writing music as quickly as possible without messing around with too many controls. As you follow along, refer to the red highlighted key range in the Kontakt display or on your complete control keyboard if you're launching Shreddage as an NKS instrument. Before we continue, you want to turn off Strum on Poly Input on the strumming page, and turn the Poly Input knob to 0. We'll be focusing on melodies and riffs in these videos, and these chord features can interfere with that, creating confusing results. Let's start with sustains, the most basic articulation that loads right out of the box. This is what you'll primarily use for lead playing in chord strums. The key to using sustains melodically is to add expressive movement during notes using pitch bend and the mod wheel. Additionally, hard velocities in most Shreddage 3 products are mapped to high-strength picking motions, which should only be used sparingly for emphasis, as picking every single note strongly in a melody flattens expression and makes it lifeless. You can reference the table in the TACT tab on the sustain articulation to view and even change where this velocity switch happens. There's also a velocity to volume knob here to control how much the volume changes when you play lower velocities, and increasing this knob will get you more dynamic range, perfect for more delicate passages. For our first example, here's a simple melody with no pitch movement and purely hard sustains. Now we'll push up the mod wheel on the longer notes and use a bit of pitch bend as well. Mod wheel adds vibrato, which is the guitarist bending the string rapidly back and forth, while pitch bend manually controls the pitch in any fashion we'd like. I often use pitch bend to create attack bends, where a note will start a whole tone or semitone lower than the pitch, moving it back into place over the course of a 16th or 8th note. Long sustained notes with no movement won't sound interesting or expressive, and since we're using a virtual guitar, expressive MIDI programming will help create more authenticity. If nothing else, pushing up the mod wheel on longer notes, as well as adding pitch bends, are two bread and butter techniques you can always pull out to add expression. If you like to program lead synthesizers in MIDI, it's actually very much the same approach. Let's talk about a few other expressions for sustains, starting with the rake. A rake is the guitarist strumming muted strings before playing a note, adding a very aggressive attack. This is very frequently used to start melodies or accent breaks within them. We can get a rake on our sustains by simply using the higher velocities above 110. If you'd like to extend the rake effect to make it a little more dramatic, you can increase the rake timing knob on the advanced page. Keep in mind that the longer you extend the time, you may have to begin playing your notes slightly behind the grid to maintain good rhythm. Next is a very important articulation for melodies, hammer-ons. A hammer-on, and subsequently a pull-off, is when a guitarist plays the note by hammering their finger on the note's fret, or pulling it off, but not actually picking the note with their other hand. This is a type of legato, or connection between notes. Legato has a smoother, mellower tone, and it's useful when writing fast melodies, otherwise known as shredding. To get hammer-ons, you need to overlap your sustain notes slightly to trigger the legato scripting, and then play under velocity 60. Every time a note is played on a new string for the first time, it'll always be picked, even if you ask for a hammer-on. This is because generally a guitarist needs to add energy to a string by picking it first before they can hammer on. At this point, I'm also going to set the minimum fret preference control to 12. This will concentrate the melody fretting to the top 12 frets, which is where the majority of lead guitar is typically played in most metal and rock music. The reason for this is that the frets are smaller and guitarists are able to more quickly play large spans of scale intervals. Because of this, we're also going to set the hand size to 7. Replicating this behavior helps the authenticity of the sound as well, as notes sound significantly different in this range. For example, medium register notes are played high up on lower strings, creating duller, more mellow tones conducive to smoother sounding melodies. Another technique we use in lead guitar writing is an articulation classically called portamento, but more commonly known as a slide. Slides create slower gliding pitch effects between two notes, which can be used to emphasize melodic leaps. Like hammer-ons, slides are a type of legato and are triggered by overlapping notes, this time while holding the yellow key switch to the right of the other articulation key switches. At this point, we should note the difference between latching key switches, which are red, and non-latching key switches, which are yellow. Latching key switches only need to be pressed once to activate the articulation, while non-latching keys must be held down. If you'd like to change whether certain articulations are latching or non-latching to your preference, you can do so on the TACT tab. Slides have much longer note transitions than hammer-ons, which are immediate by contrast, so you don't want to use them in very fast playing. You should also move your destination notes back in time a bit so they can properly land on the pitch with good rhythm. If you're using the full patch and not the light patch, you can also turn on velocity to slide speed in the articulations page to control the speed of the slide using the velocity of the destination note, up to double the speed of what was recorded on higher velocities. Be careful not to trigger a rake with velocities above 110, as that will not trigger a slide. If you'd like to use the highest velocities to control slide speed, consider changing rake to a key switch in the TACT tab. Finally, if the slide still isn't fast enough, you can try turning down the transition time in the slide articulation pane. Note, however, this will begin to cut off some of the slide sample itself, so use your ears to pick just the right amount. If the notes are really quick, the slide transitions won't even have time to trigger at all, and it'll sound like notes are hanging on their pitch. Here's an example side by side of a performance using slides improperly, and then a performance that uses slides a little more judiciously for adding some extra flavor here and there. Slides can be used to emphasize transitions between large intervals at important melody points, or to finish melodic ideas by sliding downwards. Sliding down at the end of a note is done by writing a note, maybe an octave lower, and making it short enough to play the slide transition without lingering on the destination note. Or instead of doing all that, you can simply press the green slide note key, which will slide downward all held notes right away. I usually use the green slide key, but if your notes are in a lower position on the fretboard, using the manual slide will guarantee the full interval distance. Whereas the green slide key only goes to the bottom of the fretboard. Now let's combine all the different expressions we've talked about into a longer melody. You're also going to hear a backing track with the melody to hear it in full context. We'll cover how to create the rhythm guitar part in the next video. For now, we'll break here. Stay tuned for part 2 of this episode to continue on the topic of basic riffs and rhythm guitar writing. As always, please check the video description for MIDIs and snapshots so you can replicate these parts in your DAW and study them yourself. As an extra gift, I've also included the lead tone for that melody example you just heard. Check the console manual for instructions on how to load the effects chain into your master channel.